Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. You guys heard about this? Zuffa Boxing announces broadcast partnership with Paramount. Interesting. You know what's even more interesting? Is when you find out that Zuffa is taking a stance against the old guard, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, against the sanctioning bodies. It's a little bit crazy to me because I'm not so sure how all of this is going to work. But one thing we do know is that there are emerging stories about Zuffa Boxing and Dana White's push against sanctioning bodies. Turki Alalshikh has a role in this as well, and how the traditional sanctioning bodies and boxing insiders, they're having a reaction that they don't like it, not leaving a good taste in their mouth. But this is the story now. Dana White and Turki Alalshikh have officially thrown down a gauntlet with Zuffa Boxing, a venture they're positioning not just as another promoter, but as a paradigm shift in how professional boxing is governed. Now, we all know we're professional boxing. You've heard fighters complain for years about basically buying belts. Why do I have to pay a sanctioning body to be their champion? Just doesn't make sense. Well, now you're going to see that going forward. We're going to see how Turki Alalshikh and Dana White, under Zuffa Boxing, that they're going to make the change to where fighters no longer have to worry about those sanctioning bodies. Now, Zuffa Boxing was founded in the mid-2025 as a joint venture between TKO Group Holdings, which owns the UFC and WWE, and Saudi Arabia's seller and entertainment apparatus. So one is with Dana White's thing, the Zuffa Boxing, and then the other one is Turki Alalshikh's. Now, the idea is bold. Run boxing with a more unified vertical control model, from rankings to media to championship belts, by bypassing or minimizing the traditional sanctioning bodies, the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO, rather than cooperating with them. Now, for those of you who are saying there's no way in the world this Zuffa Boxing is going to last because they need the sanctioning bodies. No, they don't. All the sanctioning bodies, for the most part, have been doing what? Whatever Turki Alalshikh says, because of the kind of money he brings to the table. So this is going to be interesting to see how this starts to play out. Now, Dana White, he went on record, and he made it clear he intends not to work with the major sanctioning bodies in the structure he builds for Zuffa Boxing. Now, I've been talking about the secret society for years, and people now understand that all that secret society talk I was mentioning, they're now understanding that Hood Champion was on to something from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Nobody was talking about the shit I was talking about. But you come and you look now at what's going on. All this started years ago. But look where it's at now, okay? Secret societies in full EFFECT. So what Dana and Turki are doing, they are building their own rankings. They're going to streamline weight classes and create a Zuffa Belt, or championship, that will crown fighters inside this new ecosystem. Now, under this plan, a fighter who wins the Zuffa Belt could then be staged for a fight for the ring title, or possibly a merger. Now, Zuffa Belt, Dana White's thing. The ring belt, Turki Alalshikh. The ring belt seems to be more prestigious than any other belt. So they're just basically getting rid of all the other belts. And what's crazy about it is when they stage these fights for the ring title, or for the Zuffa Belt, possibly merging them, but not necessarily the traditional 4 belts. And that's shocking, man. Now, Turki Alalshikh's involvement gives the venture serious political, financial, and structural backing. Alalshikh is the chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority and is also president of the Saudi Boxing Federation. Remember, he purchased the Ring magazine from De La Hoya, giving him influence over one of boxing's long-standing media brands. Turki Alalshikh has even bought people's Twitter pages and YouTube channels, in case y'all didn't know. So the blend is strategic. White brings promotional firepower and branding acumen. Alalshikh brings state capital, political backing, and the ability to play globally. Play globally. Listen to that. Together, they aim to challenge the traditional hierarchy in boxing. Now, for those of you who are saying, how in the hell are they able to do this, especially over here in America? I'm going to keep it real simple. What you see happening here is a direct result of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. You have the king of Saudi and the prince, and you got Donald Trump over here as the president. Some people are saying, oh, hood champion, there you go with the conspiracy theories. No. Hold your horses, stop taking it to the stupid. Do your research. If you look at Donald Trump has a connection with Dana White. I said this shit months ago. Donald Trump was at a UFC event. He was sitting down, Dana White was next to him, and somebody, a representative from Saudi Arabia rep, was there. And when I saw all three of them together, I said, oh shit. Saudi Arabia and what they're doing with boxing. Something big is coming. I did a video on it. So to see that you got Dana White, Turki Alalshikh, and they're working together with Zuffa Boxing and with Seller Entertainment, they're getting rid of the sanction bodies, and they're doing that all that over here in the States, they're not going to encounter any roadblocks. And also, keep in mind, I just did a video about this. They're looking to have a UFC event and possible boxing match at the White House, where fighters will walk out from the Oval Office. You think Turki Alalshikh and Dana White can just make that happen if Donald Trump's not on board? Have a fight, have an event, boxing or UFC, octagon boxing ring, all that crap, with fighters walking out from the Oval Office into the cage or into a boxing ring? So y'all need to open up the aperture a bit and peek through and understand what's going on. The secret society is in full effect, you know what I'm saying? And they're here to challenge the traditional hierarchy in boxing. And they got all the support in the world because you got Trump who's on board to make sure, hey, whatever y'all want to do here stateside, no problem. Then you got the king and prince over there in Saudi Arabia, is like, no problem. Globally. Remember, ability to play globally. So this is a big deal because they got the money to do whatever they want. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen down the road. Now, something else that's kind of breaking news is Zuffa Boxing has already inked a major media rights deal with Paramount, which will serve as its exclusive streaming home in North America beginning January 2026. The deal is for 12 cards per year initially, with room to expand in future seasons. I wonder who they're going to have on them fight cards. That's what I want to know. This aligns with how UFC has centralized content under one media umbrella under the same parent, effectively bridging MMA and boxing under one streaming architecture. So what does this all mean to the existing sanctioning bodies? That's what most people want to know. What does this mean to the Suleimans and the what's this guy's name, man? The guy who loves Crawford, Val Carcel, and then the other cat, right? Well, they're alarmed, man. They're pissed off. They don't like this news. They're defensive. They're all divided. This isn't what they want. You know what I'm saying? Because this right here is definitely taking money. They're taking these guys are taking cookies out the cookie jar, and these sanctioning bodies don't like anybody with their hands in their cookie jars. But I think it's only natural that many see it as a direct threat to their legitimacy, to their control over rankings, their control over sanctioning fees, and their political influence. Now, for those of y'all saying political influence, what are you talking about? Y'all know Mauricio Suleiman and these sanctioning bodies, but Mauricio Suleiman in particular. This guy works with the leaders of different countries. For example, what I'm going to give you is a fact. He had a bit of a... Russia's like a thorn in Mauricio Suleiman's side. Now, you remember when he wasn't allowing Bivol to fight for the undisputed distinction. They blocked Bivol Bertabiev and put Caleb Smith in there to fight Bertabiev instead of making the undisputed distinction. Remember that? Talking about Bivol, and he's from Russia, even though he was living in California. Remember all that crap? But anyway, Mauricio Suleiman had a gym built in Ukraine, okay? Just when the shit was about to open, I think it had just opened. It was something that he had built over there in Ukraine that involved boxing. But he worked with the leaders of the country to have that authorized. Politics. And then Russia came and bombed the shit, you know what I'm saying? So Mauricio Suleiman was pissed about that. So when you talk about the sanctioning bodies, if they're no longer really needed, then they're not going to be able to have any political influence and to continue to expand their brand, because everything's going to evolve around this Zuffa Boxing. And I think the sanctioning bodies rely on their historical prestige big time and regulatory role to maintain the sport's structure. If promoters begin bypassing them, they lose all their leverage. And that's all bad, man. So some in boxing see White's proposal as a usurpation of traditional authority rather than evolution. And then you know the whole thing they're trying to do with the Muhammad Ali Act, without me getting into too many specifics. I'll touch on that here briefly, but you got a lot of boxers who are speaking out about this shit, man, you know. Roy Jones Jr. went out and said Dana White's plan is very bad for the sport, warning that removing the traditional belts undermines boxing's history. Jones sees it as White trying to turn boxing into MMA, flattening the rich legacy and tradition that belts, sanctioning bodies, and varied promoters gave. Others have echoed his doubts. Critics argue White underestimates how entrenched power regional promoters and national commissions are. Many will resist being bypassed. I believe money resolves all this. You'd be surprised if there's a roadblock that happens to surface, how fast that roadblock gets smoothing out. Because it's all about the Wu-Tang cream, dollar bill, y'all. Now, one thing back on that Muhammad Ali Act, a central lever in all of this is the push to amend the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. Many just refer to it as the Ali Act, which governs promoter-fighter relationships and prevents coercive contracts. White and his backers have proposed a revival act that allows for unified boxing organizations, entities that would house promoter, ranking, and sanctioning functions in one unit. Now, the critics say this undermines the firewall the Ali Act was designed to protect, where they were separating promoter power from fighter protection. If this is passed, right, the act can make Zuffa or any unified boxing organization immune from some rules that currently restrict promoter control over ranking and belts. So if the promoter had control over rankings and belts, the promoter can put whoever he wants anywhere and control the sport of boxing. The Muhammad Ali Act precludes that. So that is the short and sweet about what Dana White wants to do. You know what I'm saying? They want the promoter to be able to control the rankings of fighters. Isn't that crazy? I just don't see how they could be okay with promoter controlling, or the promoter having control over rankings and belts. Remember the promoter. So if the promoter, if everything involved with Zuffa is Dana White, they're trying to structure like the UFC. One belt, different weight, one belt per weight division, and Dana White running the show. But because of this, some believe White is attempting to power grab, creating a parallel structure that draws fighters, fans, and media away from the old systems. If successful, he could shift the axis of boxing gravity to his own domain rather than the sanctioning bodies. But the conflict is inevitable. Promoters, sanctioning bodies, legacy champions, and national commissions will fight to maintain their turf. White's rhetoric is bold. I'm not competing with the other promoters. I'm competing with whoever takes the fans' attention on any night we are on television. So Dana White is holding steadfast and has drawn the line in the sand and saying, all right, you go, sanctioning body, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, you go and put on your own boxing event. And we'll put on ours on the same day. And we'll compete. We'll see how our event does. We'll see how your event does. So, is this fair or unfair? I think this shit's unfair. They can't compete with Turki Alalshikh and that Saudi money. They can't compete with Zuffa Boxing. The traditional sanctioned bodies cannot compete at all. But from one perspective, it's a bold vision. Boxing has for decades been fractured, over-belted, under-controlled, and inconsistent. Many fans and insiders agree the sanctioning body model is bloated, opaque, and ripe for disruption. And I kind of think some of that stuff is a little bit shady too, because you look at the WBC, you know, they kept Lomachenko. Anyway, you can just take a look at it and see where Canelo's ranked in the WBC right now. So there's a lot of corruption in the sport of boxing. But you know, will this fix anything? I don't know. But many fans and insiders agree the sanctioning body model, again, is broken. And with Dana White's model, it promises clarity, one belt, unified ranking, centralized promotion, transparency. Now that sounds fair to fans tired of belt inflation and promoter politics. But from another vantage, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of unfair. It centralizes power and gives giant promoters control over fighters in ways that historically have led to exploitation. By removing checks and balances, fighters might lose leverage, choice, and negotiating power. So whether it's fair depends heavily on how it's implemented and regulated. And I think people should really pay attention to this, because you just have Wanderlei Silva go out here and get himself into a boxing match where he was headbutting a guy in there. He was losing, then he got knocked out. But the bottom line, a guy like Wanderlei Silva, the amount of fights he had in the UFC, the type of fights that he gave the fans, he shouldn't be fighting at all. That guy should be a gazillionaire. So if I'm a boxer, I'm looking at this saying, hell no, I don't want this shit. You know what I'm saying? But I gotta get more information on the pay scale and how they plan and everything. But I don't want to end up like a guy like Wanderlei Silva. Yo, that dude is tough, man. He's a badass. He's a monster. But he's out here doing boxing now and getting his ass knocked out. He shouldn't be doing that, man, having headaches and stuff. He shouldn't be doing that at his age. But it comes back to what people say. Dana White he don't pay his fighters the kind of money they deserve. They take all that money and keep it in-house. I don't know. I just think when you start thinking, when you start really contemplating all that, and you really start tabling these discussions, I think the biggest challenge for Zuffa Boxing will be adoption. Even if White builds a grand plan, he needs fighters to trust him. He needs fighters to sign with him. The National Athletic Commission to sanction his shows, and fans to accept his belts as legitimate. Many fans are loyal to legacy belts. National commissions may refuse to recognize WBO titles or permit Zuffa events crosswise with their jurisdictions. Resistance from promoters and agents is almost guaranteed. But I think Turki Alalshikh can make it all work because he's got the checkbook. But anyway, as Zuffa Boxing rolls into its first season, every fight, every belt awarded, and every rank placed will be seen as a test. Can a Zuffa champion carry legitimacy in the eyes of fans and media? Will camps, belts, and titles from sanctioning bodies still carry weight? I don't know, but one thing for sure, the battlefield will be public credibility, legal structure, and fighter loyalty. I just don't see how they're going to get these fighters who are used to making gazillions of dollars to. Well, I guess if Turki Alalshikh's the guy he's the last few years been putting up the big purses, they're going to probably follow. And they're going to end up having to fall underneath the pay scale that under Zuffa Boxing. It almost feels like Turki Alalshikh, man, you know, if you want to, with some children, right? Because I sub at the elementary schools from time to time. And some teachers, they want a child to do something, they give them a little, hey, if you do this, I'll give you a treat. Whoever cleans up their area, does so-and-so, listens and get all the work done in time, at the end of the day, I'll give you a little treat. It's almost like that's what Turki Alalshikh did, is to get people in positions that he wants. He was giving them a little treat with the good paydays and getting everybody comfortable and softening them up. And now, boom, he's making his move. He's making his move. Because all those guys got a taste of that treat, of that ching, ching, ching. And now if you want more of that, you got to go over there. You got to go and sign to Zuffa Boxing. Yeah, that's crazy, man. But in the end, White and Alalshikh, what they're trying is audacious, you know what I'm saying? Build a new boxing world from around the world ground up. Sidestepping what they see as a broken system. If it works, they'll redefine boxing for the 21st century. If it fails or is abused, it could widen fractures, ignite legal fights, and lead to resistance. Either way, the sport is headed towards upheaval. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what to think about all that crap. I'm just really trying to picture fighters who've been around the sport for a while, who are used to things being one way, to try to adjust to the change, This is what you call, what's it called, that change theory? You unfreeze the way something's being done, then you change it, and then once it's working, then you freeze it in place. And that's what Turki Alalshikh has done. This is also that y'all learned about that storming and norming phase and shit. First you come into a place and everybody's kind of normal, and then when they start talking about changing things, then they start storming, because now you see real personalities come out and start disagreeing, and then all of a sudden they start talking about things, and they start forming and and having conversations, and then they start performing. You know what I'm saying? I think that's how it goes. I can't remember, it's been a while and shit. But more to come on all this. I just don't see how the sanctioning bodies are going to sit back and be okay with Turki Alalshikh and Dana White, quote unquote, trying to fix a sport that they feel is broken. I don't know. But I do think it's crazy that the WBC has a pearl belt. I saw that shit one time. Amir Khan was the pearl belt champion. I said, what the hell is the pearl belt? He says somebody's been getting money for a long time. So anyway, more to come on all this. But I just thought it was interesting. Because this is going to affect all of your favorite fighters. All of your favorite fighters. It's going to affect them. Anyway, y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.